Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the Improvisational Storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together, having stewed through their ideas, we are seeking to tell a story that will bake bread. This thing is going to make so much money, I am going to be able to swim in cash like Scrooge McDuck. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to continue our story. We are continuing the story that I have dubbed A Trip to the End. In this story, as a short recap, we find our friend Marius having run afoul of some shady characters after figuring out their nefarious plots to use the consciousness of people downloaded into a video game as slaves. They have basically attacked him, put him into a coma, downloaded his brain into a video game, and are now seeking to extract the secret knowledge. The various players in this are Crockett, a crotchety old man who's kind of like a rough around the edges, but ultimately lovable teddy bear. He is sort of on the outside of the game side of this story. And he is a kind of a slum landlord. One of the tenants is Marius's wife and child. Unbeknownst to Crockett and many other people, Marius's wife owns or has possession of some sort of key that would unlock all of Marius's research and all of his understanding of basically these nefarious companies. Part of this nefarious company is a company called Verde Abyss, which uses basically people who have, felons or people who have fallen onto bad times, harvests their consciousness and uses them to run systems in their games. We have a villain. His name is Daniel. He's kind of a mobster kind of guy who trades favors, creates opportunities for people to fall into the pits of his own manipulation. He also has a very big presence in the kind of Citadel area, the in-between game, the social space that everyone hangs out in. He forces people to work in game for him, and he forces people to work outside of game for him. And then our hero is, of course, Marius, or as he's known in-game, D'Artagnan. Now, to D'Artagnan, a couple of years have passed after getting into the game. He's grown up, and he's pretty much just completely forgotten about his real world and his family. In the real world, about 6 months has passed. So his perception of time, as it is in video games, is completely wrong. And in this story, so we're not picking up the story. This is kind of like an evolving story. So we might go back a little bit and make some edits. But in this place, we ended last time where D'Artagnan / Marius has just started to question something to do with the prophecy about people coming up from the Green Ocean, the Three Hills. He's just started to question whether or not he is alive. I think we had it in there that since he's a programmer, he gets and he's in the game completely, he's able to access special menus and able to basically learn any skill immediately. And he has to kind of stay low profile because obviously, there's anti-cheat software that's looking for people who are taking advantage of things. But that's where we're at right now. I had government type. Reed, what did you have?
Unique artifact.
Seth?
And I had unique weapon.
All right. Should I go first then? Because mine's kind of an overarching thing, and then you guys can go in and we can kind of build this up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So the government type is, I don't know what this is exactly is called, but it's basically any kind of federal government, any kind of apart from corporation government is gone. It happened, 30 or so years ago. Corporations got big enough that they started to buy out systems, buy out functions, and then take on functions. It soon became very apparent that working for a private army was much more lucrative than working for the whatever government-based army. And so they're like in Snow Crash, there are corporations that kind of run everything. Your taxes are the price you pay to various corporations to keep up certain things. So if you pay Asphalt Incorporated, you can drive on any roads that are asphalt. If you pay We Lay Down Roads LLC, you can only ride on the bike trails. Right, and you have to pay a heavy fee if you want to drive on the asphalt because that's Asphalt Incorporated, unless of course you are you have a passport to get into the country of Asphalt Incorporated, which is just literally every road that's asphalt. So commercialism, advertisement is everything. Who you know, where you are, what companies you can become a part of, whether, freelancers are everywhere, but real freelancers, real people who can actually kind of make it and kind of survive by existing in between the companies and providing services to them, but not being just kind of owned by them is a really big thing.
Yeah.
Hospitals are a really huge thing, right? Because everybody's got to have a hospital. Everybody's, you got to get born somewhere. And if you're born at, wellnesswithus.corp, then you get the stamp on you get the little stamp on your ankle, and you get free healthcare for the rest of your life as long as you go to wellnesswithus.corp. But in order to do that, you got to stay in this sort of tri-state area. You can't, go anywhere else. And wellnesswithus.corp has a lot of good business with tacos and munchies, like this kind of fast food chain that does tacos and other such things, so it's like you might as well work there because you're already kind of in. You get a discount if you buy your food from Tacos with Munchies if you're so everything's kind of interconnected with lots of advertising, very cyberpunky, very kind of just ads everywhere. Imagine how terrible the internet was before you found ad blocker. That is just like walking down the street.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, for example, you think like schools were long since taken over by the corporations because they realized we just want to train people up to meet our personnel needs.
Right.
Right. So you could, you're going to school, but you're being groomed to fit into a cog in the corporation.
Right. Can you imagine a farmer who the only way he knew how to farm was by using the specific tools made by the corporation that paid for the school?
Yeah.
Right? He wouldn't be able to do anything by himself. He wouldn't even really know what to do.
That's what kind of makes Crockett our kind of outlier. He is his own. He's kind of got his own odds and ends kind of business. He's got a compound on the edge of the city. He kind of makes stuff. He kind of fashions whatever falls through the cracks of the corporations. He provides and meets the needs of individuals, and it's like a word of mouth kind of thing.
Right.
And he's taken profits. He's plowed his profits into real estate. He's got these dwelling, I call them apartments, but that's just a word that, it has to do with the sprawling city, living spaces that are attached to retail, situations. Everything is connected.
Yeah.
But he's been able to carve himself out a little bit of an empire. And Daniel also has got he's kind of between the corporations, so to speak, too. Got his own thing.
Yeah, because you have corporations, and then enough people grow up under that system, and even when they create, even the criminals will have corporations.
Right.
Because if that's the system that you learn, that's how things work, then that is how things work.
Right. And, and law and order, stability, law enforcement. It's
law and order. You mean
gangs?
You mean lawandorder.co?
Oh yeah, that.
The kind of Old West Texas style themed cop people.
Yep.
Lawandorder.co, what's your emergency? I'm
exactly.
being robbed. Well, we see here you haven't paid your Law and Order tab in the last 4 months. I guess there's nothing we can do about this. Have fun being robbed.
Looks like you're way too deep in RoboCop territory. You're gonna have to call them. But I owe them money. Well, that sucks for you. See you later. And that's why I think Marius is one of those people who has really threaded the needle. And that's one of the reasons why they were uncomfortable with him at the beginning. But he's really threaded the needle and not sort of sold his soul or anything. Mysteriously, his child was born in the car on the way to the hospital, right? Where he was going to be forced to purchase he's going to be forced to sign over their future to whatever hospital he was going to go to. And it's like, yeah, my tire popped. It was crazy, and it was really crazy that this old woman from far out in the country just happened to be in town and in that place at the right time, and she was like, wow, crazy. She was a midwife. Who'd have thought? That's so interesting and weird that happened that way.
Yeah.
So he's kind of threaded the needle. And in the same way, I think that his wife has a lot of connections. Like maybe she is from out of like the city, and what's out of the city is like the roads are gone. Like everything is like flown in. So you can't just like drive into the country,
Yeah. The old interstate system that these concrete highways have become huge hydroponic farming beds,
Right.
Yeah, right. Because there's like you say, there's other alternatives for moving commodities.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe his wife is from that kind of smaller country, not country, but smaller out in the country. So she has these ideas, and she kind of won him over. And he was like this crack, programmer, and she kind of won him over to the idea of like fresh grown tomatoes.
Yeah, right.
Oh my goodness, fresh grown tomatoes.
Yeah, he comes and like she's made fresh salsa from just tomatoes and onions and peppers that she has grown. And it's like, whoa, this is like nothing like tacos and snacks.
Yeah.
This is like, whoa, how did you do this? This is incredible.
Right.
The secret is this little ingredient called Soylent Green.
Soylent Green is people.
I think I kind of have the idea of the reveal of like the truth about him and why they're actually trying to get into his brain. I think that Marius is in fact the leader of the rebellion, right? Yeah. He's been working on the inside. He's been working on the inside, and this meeting was him talking to the final informant, where the whole thing is kind of played up at first as if he was just like had just now figured this out. Like the whole story as it goes along is like he's just now figured out that, they're doing these bad things, but he's been working on the inside, and maybe he's the one who wrote the prophecy. He's the one who built in the system for those who sleep under the green ocean to rise up and have power, because he's basically trying to build, instead of like exposing them for who they are and maybe like being killed and having those people get a slap on the wrist, he's instead kept on and allowed them to continue with their whatever they're doing, and has been finding a way to wake them all up and to free them, but then gets caught and then put under.
So like, okay, going back, like, remember in the beginning scene when he's kind of he's being rushed to the hospital, right?
Right, yeah.
And he has these flashes of consciousness where he's having the confrontation with his boss.
Right.
And he's having the explaining it to his wife, okay, we may be in some real deep weeds here,
yeah.
And then he's talking to, remember, the man in the park, right?
Yeah.
And then he ends up like in the meadow where everything is peace and beautiful all the time. They're coming to take me away, haha. And he's needing to get to Maria, but that whole thing. He gets put under, and the old life is fading away, and all this.
Yeah.
Well, Maria realizes she has kind of fled, and she has packed up the kid, and they're what belongings she could get, and she's taken an apartment like off the grid,
right,
in Crockett's. Crocketville, right? And so here's where the unique artifact comes up. So Crockett, he has made his living by just, kind of private engineering. He'll just come up with a fix for something. And some of it is old school, like you got to have a part to make the machine work, right?
Right.
And then the other part of it is the high-tech world, right? And he realizes that Marius's wife, she kind of confides in him that they're kind of on the lam here. And she wants to make sure that her whole deal is off the grid so that they can't find her, because she's like, she has the key, right?
Right.
But what it is Marius's programming that he had made sure she had the files about how this is all DNA based and makes the possibility of this total download of like the neural net.
Yeah.
Right. And so what Crockett has some technical know-how. And so what he is able to do, he fashions the unique artifact, which he calls the upload spike. And he realized because of the DNA signature of each person that is in Verde Abyss, under the green sea, so to speak, that he can literally, he has fashioned a device that can be plugged in to the system and will literally upload the downloaded neural net back into the original because it follows the genetic code.
Okay.
So what he has done, he explains that Maris, his wife, is afraid that he has been completely captured and subverted to the system. And what he does is he comes up with a mechanism. So once he finds a way, once they figure out a way to access the system, he'll be able to upload the whole reality back into Marius.
Okay.
And the others, those who are asleep under the Green Sea, the Verdi, the victims at Verdi Abyss, those that are actually powering the whole system. So he's fashioned, this is the artifact, he's fashioned what he calls the upload spike. But he is still, what's waiting to happen is him being able, he and Marius's wife being able to find a way to access and to plug it in.
Right.
But there's also the whole thing of the prophecy, the red, when the three hells over the Green Sea, well, the red dragon will arise. Well, there's still a few pieces that have to fall together before the upload spike can be used.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the upload spike has to be plugged into a computer that is currently housing his consciousness.
Right.
That's how that works.
Yep.
So they have to find out where Verde Abyss is, because they can't just plug it into a computer because the bandwidth isn't enough. It would take like 100 years to transfer his consciousness through. So they have to find basically where the servers that are holding his computer and hopefully also his body to be able to get it.
Right.
That's cool. I like that. I kind of imagine kind of like a techie kind of ice pick spike that's like about a foot long, and it's got like a bunch of prongs on the end, and you can literally just like jam it in, and the ends just kind of open up and connect to a bunch of different things.
That's like free CPO plugging into the Death Star. Just
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so good. Seth, do you have anything to top that?
Okay, so the unique weapon it's kind of part of the prophecy as well, but it's kind of it's more of like how would you put it? So in the last episode, Daniel's game side kind of group of people, persona.
He's Mark in game, right?
In game, he's Mark. And so Mark and, his cronies, they all kind of try to place themselves as the part of this prophecy that'll, take down this supposed red dragon to kind of give themselves an air of, importance and virtue.
The blue moon.
And they have this,
the blue moon or something?
The blue sun.
The blue sun.
When the blue sun rises.
So the blue sun itself is the weapon. But the way that it's the weapon is it's part of the prophecy, and they all have it wrong. Or a lot of people have it wrong. So this blue sun is this half orb, okay? Because it's rise. They rise with the blue sun, right?
Right.
If they turn and rise with the blue sun. Well, the blue sun is it's like a half orb, and then it has, all the rays coming off of it, right?
Right.
Well, it's, and so some people, they're going to, try to represent that in a certain way. However, the real weapon is, it's a mouse.
It's a mouse?
So a mouse, like the little rodent, a mouse.
Okay.
But so here's the deal. The programming, so elephants are afraid of mice, right?
Right.
They're absolutely fearful of mice. However, elephants have a superb, memory retention, little thing, they have an extremely good memory. So the AI that has built the game is built off of the algorithm that they copied from an elephant.
Okay.
So there's no mice in the game because they've programmed there to be no mice. However, so it'd be like where they put the name of God, where they have the 4-letter thing, where that's not really the name, but there's certain vowels inside of there that if you know the right combination, it adds into there and it spells out the actual name. Yeah. So the same thing, the blue sun, blue is synonymous with gray or a gray color of a mouse.
Okay.
And that's why those that are under they have to turn and rise with the blue sun. But see, the blue sun rising is the opposite way of it. And they can't make the full figure of the mouse. So it's the body, and then all of the limbs of the mouse appear as the rays. So if you turn it, the rising blue sun around, now all those little rays become the legs and the nose and the tail. And so then if you connect all those lines together, it now makes a mouse.
Image of a mouse. Which everything is designed, since it's all designed on an elephant's AI, everyone just immediately gets the feared condition.
Right. So even having like the blue sun gives like anyone that has that, it gives like an air of like, ooh, like, and no one knows why, but like if they have that blue sun, then they're, respected, and, it gives that little edge. But like then you have the secret sect inside the game that have figured it out, that it's actually turned. You turn with the rising of the blue sun. If you turn it and it's upside down, it now becomes the weapon or the gift to fight the red dragon.
That's so great. That's weird, and I love it. That's exactly the kind of thing that people would overlook that would totally and completely break a system. So I think in this is kind of the middle part of the story. As we get to it now, we have two separate stories going on. Basically, we have Maria, right? That's her name, Marius's wife, Maria, and Crockett, who have kind of got to know each other now over these last 6 or so months. And Crockett has begun to develop, or is in the process of developing, the upload spike, right? Which will effectively be able to extract Marius's consciousness should they get to a computer. Should they not be able to like just do it naturally, by like typing in buttons and having it just sent back to his brain.
Right.
It's kind of like the end. It's like the plan D kind of thing. And they're kind of working on, maybe he's working on sort of gathering people around to kind of go out and, proceed on this mission, as it were. Daniel is kind of increasing because he's been now contracted by shady organizations and governments and things to find the key, because they haven't broken into Marius's brain yet, and so he is now increasing his kind of like threats to Crockett. Him and Crockett used to not get along. It wasn't that they got along, but there was some mutual respect, and they just kind of stayed out of each other's area, right? But Daniel has started to do things that, reprehensible things that are sort of breaking Crockett out of being just kind of a crotchety, leave me alone kind of guy, and turning him more into like, I actually have to do something kind of guy.
Yep.
Which it kind of lifts him into a more hero state and less into an anti-hero. Gives him a sense, gives him a more sense of a moral compass kind of thing. And then on the other end, we have D'Artagnan in the game, who's doing lots of fantastical and crazy things, right? But has secretly begun sort of becoming a prophecy junkie.
Yeah.
Right? Which entails basically, because how I think the world works, which I think this is kind of an interesting idea. The main social world is a huge city mirroring the city that everyone lives in, right? The gigantic 800 mile city. It mirrors that with the Verde Abyss. We'll say it's Chicago. So like Lake Michigan, right? That kind of idea of like a city right on a huge lake, right? The game mirrors that, the huge social world. Citadel is it's called. But then every other game also mirrors that. It just looks different, right? And sometimes it's a little tiny town in a, fantasy world. Sometimes it's a, space station on a, the starting place on a space game. You can leave and come back, but the main place is always this area with the 3 hills and the green sea. Sometimes it's a forest and not a sea, but it's always the same place. The geography always looks the same. And you can always go and come back. So you don't play your whole game here, but this is always kind of the main place, because the thing is that the prophecy is true regardless of where you are, right?
Right.
Because as we know, the system is all built into everything. The AI, the memory system is built into everything. So it's true across the board, right? And so what we see is, first we see D'Artagnan jumping through several different worlds and kind of like forgetting each individual past as he jumps into a new world. He'll jump into FPS world, and he'll be Dart Commando, with the red headband and the bulging muscles and firing the minigun with the back mounted, with the backpack mounted magazine, and he'll jump into the fantasy world and he'll be D'Artagnan, the magnificent storytelling bard, and he'll jump into the sci-fi one and he'll be Tan, the weird space pirate, whatever it is. And with each thing he kind of forgets, or his, as like when you play a different game, you sit down to play Red Dead Redemption, you think like a cowboy. When you sit down to play Cyberpunk 2077, you think like a cyberpunk. When you sit down to play Fallout, you're a wasteland survivor. When you sit down to play BioShock, you're a weird detective. When you sit down, it's like in the same way that a player would change how they perceive or what they're doing based on what RPG they're playing. That's the same thing that he does. But the problem is that he always also ends up at Citadel, right? Because essentially he's a player who's always connected, right? He never has to go to the bathroom. He doesn't have to get off to go to work, and he's not connected via like just Neuralink. He's not connected via like a microchip in his brain, or like one reading brain signals from a hat that he wears. He's like in it. And so he starts to question, and based on other people saying things, he starts to question whether it's real or not. And he begins to sort of pull things from different, and he becomes kind of this collector of information. And for him, like several years have passed on the inside, and he's like has this huge kind of in-between worlds workshop where he's working on projects, he's working on projects to break games, but really what's happening is his admin level access and his programmer's mind converts creating a bomb into like a breaking of a structure, like in the programming. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So he's like doing this thing, and he becomes like this kind of legendary character that that people like talk about in the game, so maybe like a year has passed in game, outside of game, because that would make a lot more sense than like just 6 months. But and I would say he gets kind of contacted, either Maria and Crockett meet up with some of the other rebellion, the other people who are trying to seed the rebellion, and they go into the game to try and find him and are able to kind of meet up with him, or Maria goes into the game to try and find him, right? And then she has to like not win him over again, but he doesn't recognize her, for one, because she doesn't look like herself, and for two, because he's kind of lost his memory. And so this middle part of the game is her trying to like convince him that there's something else. And, first she has to find him and then convince him that there's something else. And then he kind of shows her how he's just like everything. And he falls in love with her. And she is like, "You idiot. Of course you're in love with me, because we're already together outside of the game. What I need you to do is like believe that the world isn't real and like break out of this thing and help me find you. Use your genius to help me find you and where you are." And he's like, "Oh, Martha, your beauty has never failed to astound me," because he's they're in fantasy world and he's like the bard, or like she's like in FPS world, like he's covering her as she's like reloading, and she's like trying to tell him, and he's like, "Oh babe, it's all good, I got you." And he's like, "America," he's like gunning down whatever Nazi robots or whatever, and she like tries to meet him in these places, and I could kind of see like short stories or whole chapters, and there's something he has to do in each area to set up the prophecy. And then he ends up kind of like, after all these things, he doesn't have any recollection of her at all. He only has the fact that she has proven herself in all these games, and she's proven herself true and right, and he's just fallen in love with her, right? Because she's just like a good person, and she like is dedicated to him, and she knows so much about him, and she like knows how he thinks, and it's like crazy. It's like she can like read his mind or something, but he never kind of gets to that place of kind of like recognizing that something is different. He always kind of knows something's different, but he never really gets to that place until like, the last 5 chapters or something, where something crazy happens, where like the people start to wake up, or she gets cut off, or Mark comes and kills her in-game character, or something happens, you know what I mean? Something happens that really pushes him over the edge. and then all of a sudden things start to move forward very quickly. I just talked for 15 minutes straight. How does that sound to everyone?
It sounds pretty cool. I'm kind of thinking it worked together with what we were doing before.
What do you think, Seth?
I think it all comes together pretty good so far.
Right. So
I'm hoping we'll figure out what the red dragon is going to be.
Right.
I have an idea, but
okay, because I'm thinking just based on the amount of story elements we have left to select, we could if we wanted to drag this out another another week, another 2 weeks at least. If we wanted to say 2 more weeks of this story, should we do that?
I think so.
Okay, I'm just so used to wrapping things up that I have to remind myself that we're trying to do a more long form thing.
Yeah, no, I have a couple ideas that would kind of get it towards wrapping up, but I think if we have this many other story elements, I think it should be left to
well, let me hear
a few
your
other
idea.
Independent,
or not. If it was the wrapping up,
I'd say like I said, I think it would get too close into wrapping part of it up, and I think that part of it should be left to a possible other side of things. There are another element that brings in what could be going on.
That's why I felt like I got unique artifact. I wanted to drop that in. That's a thing that can be implemented at the proper time.
Right. And what that also does is that gives Maria a reason to access and find him.
Right.
Because before she's doesn't know, and she's she's got no support group because she is not connected to all the chat rooms and everything that Marius was in, right? She needs to form her own plan. And so she does, and she recruits Crockett, and they work together and they get this thing, and then she kind of dives in. And I think that what we need to create next with our stuff is the catalyst that causes everything to start. That's one thing. And then the end. Yeah. Right? So, you know what I mean? So the catalyst that causes everything to start happening, the reveal of who the red dragon is, I think would be
and
a
so
big
on
one.
that point has a little bit to do with what I have to say. But basically all I'll say in that regards is, according to the prophecy, the 3 hills will be flattened and then the red dragon arises.
Okay. Right.
So that catalyst that gets whatever it is going, looking towards the future things, is something that makes whatever these 3 hills are that watch over the green sea are flattened. And after that, then the red dragon.
Perfect. Okay, great. That's good. I'll think about that. Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait It Gets Better, and this episode to the end, where we are doing a new and crazy thing. If you like this new and crazy thing that we're doing, trying to build one cohesive story instead of just making a new one every week, I would say please let me know on Twitter at @GetsBetterCast, or email me at waititgetsgettercast@gmail.com. If you don't like this story, the way that we're doing it, I would say just wait. It gets better.